Hey guys, it's Max from Bushings and Bytes here, and today we're going to go over installing CodeServer and Ollama on your TrueNAS system, and hopefully by the end of it you should be able to log into your CodeServer instance, have a Python development environment set up on that, and have the Ollama Python package installed that'll start letting you use the built-in Ollama functions in Python to query the AI model running. I'm running TrueNAS 25.10 Goldeye. This is a more recent version and has more up-to-date NVIDIA drivers. I'm using an NVIDIA graphics card to run Ollama on. It can run on the CPU or other graphics cards, but this guide will be going as if you have an NVIDIA GPU installed as well. Make sure your system recognizes your installed GPU and you have the most up-to-date drivers or CUDA version. You can go to System, Shell to access the CLI, and then you'll type NVIDIA SMI to see your installed NVIDIA devices. So it'll list everything it recognizes. I just have a 1660 Super installed, so you can see that there. Then you can see my driver versions and all of that up here. So more recent drivers and CUDA version, so that's all good. If you have older hardware or you're unsure if it's compatible, you can always go to the docs.ollama.com/GPU, which I'll link in the description, to check to make sure your device is on this list. So it can Ollama supports some older hardware like your 750 series graphics cards or even some older Quadro graphics cards. So you can always check this list. If it's not on the list, you can always go to the NVIDIA's website and just make sure its compute compatibility is above 5.0. So now that we've checked that our graphics card is recognized and compatible with Ollama, we can start by creating the data sets that we'll use. So we're going to go to datasets, go to wherever you want to store your app data. And then once you're there, you can add a data set. You can name it. So start with the Ollama one. We can just keep it as generic. We're going to save. Then we're going to make our code server volume. You can leave this one as generic as well. So these are used for code server. This is where your workspace data is stored. So every file you create and code in there is stored in here. And then for Ollama, this is how you get your persistent storage for models. If you don't set these up and leave it unmounted, it'll work, but if the container shuts all the way down, stuff won't be persistent and you'll have to reinstall everything. So it's better to just have these directly mounted. So now that we have our data sets made, I'm going to be using Dockage to set these up. You can use whatever you want to deploy these containers, but we will be going off of Docker Compose. So I'm setting these up in two separate containers. You could do them in one container, but just for what I'm doing, we're doing them separate. So we'll start with setting up our Ollama container. Here's the compose I'm using. I have adapted that from the Ollama website. Here's their full compose file. This one comes with the Open Web UI. We're not going to be using that with this since we're just going to be using their Python library to interact with it. So you can really just take this top part with Ollama, and I did do some changes. Yeah, you can just use this, make sure it's a port that's open, and make sure we're just going to be mounting this volume. So you see that, you have your image Ollama, you have your ports, we're mapping it to this because this is an open port we have, and then here's where that volume we created earlier. And the most important part is giving it access to the GPU if you're running it on the GPU. You do this with deploy, resources, reservations, devices, capabilities, and GPU. So this lets it run the models on your GPU. If you don't do this, you'll get some errors. So since this one's done, let's start, see if it spins up. It does, and a little check to make sure it has access to the GPU. We can go to the command here and run the NVIDIA SMI. And as you can see, it sees the graphics card. Everything's the same as when we ran the TrueNAS CLI. So now that Ollama is set up, we can set up our code server container. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward. We're using the Linux server image. I got from this link, and I'll leave that link in the description. And here's kind of the compose I took and used. So we'll go back here, pretty much the same. You will notice a difference. I'm giving this container access to the GPU. This is not required, but later on in a future video, I may go over using PyTorch, Python library in your code server. And since that library is GPU accelerated, it's nice to just have this set up so you don't have to go back and change your compose file later on. So environment variables, you have your password to log in, your super user or sudo password, your workspace, so config workspace, the app name, and then something nice we can do to make sure Python is always ready to go on the system is install a Docker mod, which is something the Linux server images offer. So we see here Linux server mods, code server Python 3, and then I'll leave a link to all the mods available for code server down in the description. So you can install the .NET framework, R, you can install a lot of different things into your server container. Pretty simple. You don't have to use apt install, which is not persistent. This is as persistent as you're going to get with this. Then for volumes, that volume were created earlier. As you can see, it maps to config, so that is where our workspace is going to be stored. So now we're going to spin this up. So it started, no problem. You'll see here it's running the Docker modification logic. Now from a cold start of this container, it will take a little bit while it installs the Python mod and everything that goes with that. But after that, it'll spin up a lot quicker since it's already installed. So now that container is fully up, Python is installed. So we can see here, it's ready to go. Now again, same as we did in the Ollama container, let's just check to make sure it can see the graphics card. NVIDIA SMI, again, same thing. See here, got our 1660. So now we are in our code server web interface. This will be at your server IP and the port you assign to it and your compose file. So when you first get on, it might ask you if you want to trust everything in the workspace. Just click yes, since you'll be the only one using it. And then the next most important thing is this tutorial should pop up. You're going to want to put this on dark mode. This will be required for the next steps. So now that we're in dark mode, we're going to close this tutorial and go to your extensions and install your Python packages. So this is the Microsoft Python extension. This includes everything basic that you need to start working with Python. So we're just going to click install on that. And then after it does get installed, we're going to refresh our browser to make sure everything gets applied. So after you install this extension, you're going to just want to close the window and reopen it. So now that we're in here, there should be an option to do the Get Started with Python Development tutorial. So this is the easiest way to get started. Of course, if you're experienced with using Python and VS Code, all the steps to get that running are the same, but we'll just go with this because it's the easiest and best way to walk you through. So first, we're going to create a project folder. Let's just call it my Python. So open project folder, go to workspace, my Python, enter that. That'll get us working in that directory. So now we can go back to the get started with Python tutorial, create a Python file. So hello world.py. So have our Python file. The next step is creating our Python environment. So this is the most straightforward. We just want to create a VNV and then use the global interpreter to get this going. So you see in the corner, it's doing everything you need to, upgrading pip so you won't have to run pip upgrade once it's installed. So we'll get back to you after this is set up. So now the virtual environment is all set up, so we can be done with this for now. and go into our hello world. So we're just going to print hello world. So we're going to click run button up here. It should already get our active environment set to the VNV we just made. So you can see up there, it runs the virtual environment activate command when we press the play button, and it runs this file. And as you can see, we have the correct output, hello world. So as I said, it already did upgrade pip when it installed, but we can just do a check by doing pip install -- upgrade pip. So running that, as you can see, it's already updated, but it's just good practice and prevent errors if you're trying to install a package that isn't on your pip registry. So now that that's done, what we're going to do next is pip install Ollama. So Ollama is nice. They have a Python library or you can directly query an Ollama instance either in the same system or container or over the network. So there you go, Ollama is installed. So now that Ollama is installed, we're just going to make a Python file, Ollama test.py, and we're just going to pull a super small model. So from Ollama, we're going to import clients. Since these aren't the same container, you'll need to query it over the network. So that's what the client is used for. So our client path is your system's IP, and then the port that you set the Ollama in and the Docker compose, and then you'll create a new client object. So client equals client, and then the host is our client right there. And then we're going to pull our first model. We're just going to do a small one with 270 million parameters. If you want to pull different models, you can always go to the Ollama library right here. It'll have all the models it supports directly pulling. So you can go in here and just copy the text, put it in the client.pull, but we're just pulling this small model now. So if Ollama is installed properly, clicking play, it'll run the file, and then we'll have to wait a bit for it to fully install. So we'll come back once that model is installed. So as you can see, the program is done executing. It won't send any messages, but that means it worked and there was no errors. So now that we have pulled our first model, get rid of this. Then again, we'll import client. And now we're going to go over how to send a message. So again, we'll want to create a new client object just with our host being server IP and the port the Ollama container is on. And then we will do our first message. So response object will equal your client and you'll chat with it. We're choosing the model we just pulled, and the message we're going to send it is that we are a user and we are asking it, why is the sky blue? So now that'll just query the model, but to get the output, we're simply going to just put a print line, print response.message, and this is similar to a dictionary. So we just want the content of the message. We don't want the model information or any of the tools it tried to use. So we just want the answer, why is the sky blue? So now that we have that, we should run it. I'll run down here, it'll think a little bit, and that was pretty fast, loading up the model and asking it. So you can see the sky is blue to Rayleigh scattering, and here's this message. So that's the most simple and basic way. So we know Ollama is working and we know Code Server is working as well. So from here you can build a lot of different apps. Something I've done in the past is made two models talk to each other, one hosted on my working computer and one on the server. So that was a fun little thing, and I can go over how I made that in a later video. So one last thing is, because we're using the client, we can kind of query any other computer. So let's say I want to query my computer I'm working on right now. I could just put in that one's IP and the Ollama IP, and then if I had this model installed, I could send that one a message. So we're not going to do that right now, but that is something you can do. Let's say you have a better graphics card on the computer you're working on right now. You can just install Ollama on that, and just query that Ollama using the same stuff. So it's pretty versatile. You have multiple computers, you can leverage all of them to kind of start building the foundations to um, your own AI application in Python. So that's about it for today, guys. I want to thank you for watching. This is my first video, so I'm always open to feedback on how to improve and all of that. And as you could tell, I'm not professionally trained in managing the TrueNAS or doing tech or IT. It's just a passive interest as I am a process engineer, my day job, but this is a hobby and I want to bring you guys along for the learning journey and help go through things that I struggled to set up in the past and making sure you guys don't fall into the same pitfalls. So you're going to follow my journey playing around with AI and machine learning. Videos we have planned in the future is setting up PyTorch on your code server environment and setting up the Ollama web UI and making some fun little applications like making AIs chat to each other and outputting to a markdown file so you can read the results of that later. And some of the stuff they get talking to is a bit interesting, but we'll have more for you guys next week. Thank you for watching.